And we'll get the message. Oops. And I'm going to share the screen. One minute. And there's the dean.
Day.
Hello. Oh. Treasures. Another regular. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Thanks for joining. Okay, well, thanks to those who are here or online or watching the recording. This is the dean would often say.
Yeah.
And thanks to our chancellor, Canon David Bell, for doing this version or episode of the Commons on annual meetings. So I'm just going to share this presentation.
Well, it's my pleasure to talk a bit about annual meetings. When I first became chancellor, I used to get a lot of questions on this topic. And since we started sending out a little 2-page cheat sheet in January, the questions are greatly reduced. But if you're the main sources for the annual meeting are Canon 6, which is called Parish Governance. But then on the Synod website, under the parish officers tab, as it were, is an annual meeting page, and that is useful. But I thought we'd begin today with a reminiscence of the late Reverend Basil Buckland. His book, his memoir, Country Parson, which focuses on his service in rural New Brunswick in the 30s and 40s, is one of the two great works of 20th century New Brunswick Anglicanism and really should be read widely. But here's the annual meeting of the parish of Westmoreland, which is on the border of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia in 1941. The annual meeting of the parish with 6 present at the rectory lasted from 8:30 p.m. until 11:45. It took a very long time to elect a church warden. And you'll notice not just that it was in the rectory, but it was in the evening. Parish meetings in New Brunswick Anglicanism used to be in the evenings after the end of the workday. If you can get that book, you should try to get it. So when must the annual meeting be held? Traditionally in England and also in the colonies, the annual meeting was always held on Easter Monday. The inconvenience of that was not just that Easter Monday changed from year to year, but in New Brunswick, Easter Monday could fall within the season of mud, when roads were almost impassable in the country from mud. So early in the 20th century, the legislature changed the equivalent of what today we would call the Anglican Church Act to say that the parish meetings should be held on the Saturday before Easter Monday. Now think of that expression, the Saturday before Easter Monday. What were they trying to avoid saying? The legislature, which was dominated by Protestants, was trying to avoid the phrase Holy Saturday. So it became the Saturday before Easter Monday. Although why they couldn't say the day before Easter, I don't know.
Or the day after Good Friday.
Or the day after Good Friday. So yes, although of course that might offend Protestants too. In any event, as you know, the annual meeting these days is between the 1st of January and the 15th of March. So it's at a time when the ground will be frozen and not muddy. The only trick is you have to give 3 weeks notice. So if you're going to have your annual meeting in January, you probably got to have given your notice in December. Who presides? Well, this brings us to the great glitch in Canon 6. Canon 6 is probably our most resorted to canon. And one of the things you'll notice if you read Canon 6 from beginning to end is that it presupposes that a parish that has a cleric will have an incumbent. And an incumbent under our definition includes the term rector. It presupposes that a parish will have a rector. And if any parish doesn't have a rector, that is to say the parish has a priest in charge, a deacon in charge, a missionary, a curate, etc., the Canon 6 presupposes that that's temporary and anomalous. So that Canon 6 makes no provision, or next to no provision, for a parish with a cleric who is not an incumbent. So that, for example, there's a great long list of the duties and privileges of the incumbent. Control of the keys, direction of the choir, and all of that. Not a word about the priest in charge. The incumbent is a signing officer, not a word about the priest in charge. So the reason that's relevant is it comes up with who presides at the annual meeting. Canon 6 says that the person who presides is the incumbent ex officio. Or if the incumbent chooses not to preside or chooses to be away that day, then the incumbent may name one of the wardens as the chair. But in any other case, except for two minor exceptions, the chair is elected. So if it's a parish with a priest in charge, a deacon in charge, a lay reader in charge, et cetera, or it's a vacant parish, the chair of the meeting is the person the meeting elects. So if there's no incumbent, then really the first item of business for the parish is to choose the clerk, or get someone to volunteer as the clerk, and the clerk will conduct the election of the chair of the meeting. The minor exceptions for that generalization, either the incumbent or the elected chair, is if the bishop is present, the bishop is entitled as of right to chair. If it's a vacant parish and the archdeacon is present, the archdeacon may choose to chair the meeting. Who is the clerk of the meeting? It's not, as one would suppose, the vestry clerk. It's the person that the meeting chooses as its clerk, who may well be the vestry clerk. The agenda is proposed by the incumbent and the wardens. Again, no provision for the priest in charge. But it's only a proposed agenda. Of course, the agenda that ends up is the agenda accepted by the meeting. Who may attend? Who may speak? Well, if it's a meeting of the shareholders of a business corporation, then the meeting can be closed to anyone but shareholders. And likewise, if it's a meeting of the parish corporation, then if push comes to shove, the meeting is closed to anyone but the voting members of the parish. Of course, most parishes would be pleased if the public attended. They might even be tempted to go out into the highways and byways and encourage attendance, particularly if there were a guest speaker at the annual meeting. But the question does occasionally become relevant as to whether non-members may attend the meeting. It can come up in this way. The parish is doing something that a segment of the population objects to, or the parish might do something that people objected to, or the parish wasn't doing something that a segment of the public wanted them to, the question does come up from wardens as to whether these others may attend the meeting. And the answer is simply that it's a private meeting of voting members. And if anyone else is there, they are there by sufferance of the meeting. If anyone else speaks, it's by sufferance of the meeting. Another circumstance in which this might be relevant is a case where someone's parents are members of the parish, but the parents are of an age where they don't attend the annual meeting, but they've got something to bring up. And one of their children attends, a child who's a member of a different parish nowadays. And that person wants to raise the parental concern to the meeting and maybe even make a motion. The obvious topic under those circumstances is the deplorable state of the parish cemetery. And at the sufferance of the meeting, that person can speak, but only at the sufferance of the meeting. And the person certainly can't make a motion that this or that be done. So technically, like meetings of the parish corporation itself, so the annual meeting of the parish corporation is open to members. And who are the members? Well, we have a long definition of who is a voting member. Baptized Christians who are at least 16, who worship and have been regular communicants, and who were regular contributors, financial and otherwise, to the mission of the parish during the previous year. At one of the early synods I attended, we attempted to shorten that definition so that it wouldn't be quite so many requirements, but that was not accepted.
It actually got lengthened, I think. We ended up putting that "and otherwise" in there at the end.
Giving.
Yes.
Annual reporting. Well, you expect that Canon 6 will refer to a document called an annual report, and that will have a whole list of things that should be in that annual report. And that's not the way it is. There is one, well, there are actually two references in all of our legislation, from one end to the other, to there being such a document as an annual report. But you don't get much guidance as to what should be in the annual report. But there are a few references to annual reporting, whether the reporting is in the document called the report or not. But surprisingly few references. And those few references are on the screen. The annual reporting includes an accountant's review of the prior year's financials. And I won't attempt to say what a review is, but I know it isn't an audit. It's a gentler look at the prior year's receipts and expenditures. And although my slide says it's by an accountant, it needn't be, strictly speaking, by an accountant. It can be what Canon 6 calls two competent persons who review the statement of financials as presented by the parish treasurer. So that has to be presented to the annual meeting. The annual meeting doesn't have a provision, as you do find in other business corporation annual meetings, for the appointment of next year's auditors. That is not required. The annual meeting also must receive the outgoing vestry's proposed budget for the current year, which the annual meeting will either accept as submitted or will amend. And the annual meeting is also supposed to receive, and this is to be in the annual report document, a list of the trusts of which the members of the corporation, members of the vestry, are trustees, and it is to state the spending restriction on those trusts. Typically, the trusts will say you preserve the principal and you get to expend the interest, or you preserve the principal and you get to expend the interest on the cemetery, or whatever. Our cemetery regulation adds that you have to present to the annual meeting a separate listing of the trusts related to each of the cemeteries. And both of those provisions, the general trust provision and the specific cemetery trust provision, are there to remind everyone that the parish, in all probability, has trusts, and the fact that they are trusts means that the capital, usually only the income, is spendable only for the purpose expressed in the trust. People do need to be reminded of that every year. And people standing up at the back of the meeting ought to feel encouraged to question the treasurer or the vestry as to whether the trust funds are to be spent properly. If parishes don't spend their trust funds within the limits or the restrictions of the trust, then it disincentivizes other people from entrusting assets to the parish. Another thing that the cemetery management regulation says is that the current maps of the parish cemeteries are to be produced at the annual meeting. So they're not part of the annual report. But again, they're there to allow everyone in the parish to look them over and make sure the maps are up to date, make sure the maps are being kept up to date. Those are the only things that are required to be produced at the parish annual meeting. There is no checklist of other things that should be gone through, though there is, as a matter of policy, or there are a great many other things that should be covered at the annual meeting: reports from various organizations, reports from the parish corporation itself as to what they set out to do during the year and what they did do during the year. The meeting should not be rushed through as if it were an ordeal to get through. It's good when people stand up at the back and say, I noticed there are shingles blowing around in the churchyard. What about that? How many years has it been since we checked our fire extinguishers as to whether they're current? How long has it been since we checked the water in the rectory to make sure it's of the appropriate potability, and so on? It's good to have this forum where such questions are asked. And of course, there also should be a forward-looking discussion as to what the mission of the parish will be in the coming year, and also how that mission is reflected in the budget that has been prepared. Where is the expenditure line that talks about the parish's mission for the coming year? All of these are good questions. And much as the annual meeting can be an ordeal for the person who happens to be in the chair, it's an opportunity that should not be wasted, in my opinion, and I will stop homilizing. So then we come to the elections, and there are two individuals elected called church wardens. They must be lay members of the parish. The question does come up from time to time about retired clerics, but they're not eligible. And they can't be of the same household. In fact, they can't be of the same household as any other signing officer in the parish. This is to avoid a situation like a husband and wife being made the two wardens. That's not a good idea in general because they're both signing officers. But there could also be a situation where a husband and wife went to Europe for a month in the winter and the parish had no incumbent. So all of a sudden, who's going to be signing the checks? So to avoid that inconvenience, we have this rule in Canon 6 that you cannot have two signing officers of the same household, which rules out both wardens being from the same household. The other restriction on being a church warden is you can't serve for more than 5 years in a row. And there is that exception that if both wardens have reached their term limit, one of them may continue for 1 further year. When we come to the vestry, we misuse the term vestry to refer to the entire corporation, but when we do that, we know it's not quite right, but it's a very handy term. But technically, the incumbent and the wardens aren't members of the vestry. The vestry are those other people. And before we get to the election of the vestry, we have to have a motion that sets the number to be elected. And the number in question is between 6 and 12. And having set the number, we have the election. The election, as with the election for wardens, ought to be by ballot. Canon 6 doesn't require that it be by ballot, but that's the obvious way to do it. Again, the vestry members have to be laity. And there is no term limit on their service. And technically, they can all be from one congregation if it's a multi-congregation parish. They can be all males or all females. They can be all young or all, etc. But of course, one tries to balance things out, which is harder when there is no term limit on service, but there isn't. No one has the right to waive the requirement about 2 wardens and at least 6 vestry, or the term limit on wardens. One does hear from time to time the bishop confess that this or that parish has approached the bishop for a dispensation on the number issue, but the bishop has no authority to offer such a dispensation. I've been reading a lot in the canons of other dioceses, and it is true that in other dioceses, the bishops can dispense, but not here. That said, there is a provision in the Anglican Church Act that allows the diocesan council to change the governance of a parish. And in the case of one parish, it has done that to allow for 1 warden and I think perhaps 3 vestry. But when the council did that, it said out loud, and it's probably in the minutes, that that situation was not to be regarded as a precedent for another parish. So that's where things stand. Election of synod delegates, where, well, the only trick here is the parish's allotment of 2 lay delegates, and they do have to be laity again, can be varied if one of the people elected is a quote unquote youth member. And a youth is someone between the ages of 16 and 20 and 35 on the day of the parish annual meeting. In that case, the parish is entitled to send 3 delegates to synod and presumably to elect 3 substitutes, provided that on synod day, one of the 3 who actually shows up from the parish is, or at least one of those who shows up from the parish is one of those youth. For lay delegates from a parish, there is also a term limit on attendance at synod. You can't attend more than 3 regular synods in a row without reaching your term limit, which means simply that you have to sit out the next regular synod. And the question is,
You can read it out loud. That's actually a situation in a parish right now.
a parish not too far distant. The canon doesn't allow that. I can think of a parish, and I don't know whether it's the one that others are thinking of, where the treasurer in question became an assistant treasurer, so that someone else who wasn't a spouse of a warden became the nominal treasurer. And so the canon was not violated. I don't know whether that's a good idea, but I know a parish where that situation is in effect.
So the signing office, the warden is automatically supposed to be a signing officer.
Right.
Right, yeah,
But not an assistant treasurer.
right, yeah. Thanks, Chris.
So have we reached the end of the slides? We have. Oh, my goodness.
Got more people.
Speak of the parish and look who appears.
So are there, oh, okay, David Reed is asking, would you mind confirming the term length of a warden?
Well, that's a good question. The maximum term length is 5 years, but wardens don't have to be elected on a year-by-year basis. And for that matter, members of the vestry don't have to be elected on a year-by-year basis. A warden can be given a 3-year term. A member of the vestry can be given a 3-year term as opposed to a series of 1-year terms, so long as, in the case of the warden, it doesn't go beyond the 5 years.
Okay.
Someone asks whether the vestry, as a vestry, can have more than 12 members. No, but remember, the incumbent doesn't count in the 12, and the wardens don't count in the 12. The treasurer need not count in the 12 unless the treasurer has actually been elected, and ditto the secretary doesn't count in the 12 unless the secretary has also been a member, elected as a member of the vestry. So the maximum parish corporation in terms of persons elected, or in the case of an incumbent, is 15. Incumbent, 2 wardens, 12 vestry. I think Susan has her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, the definition that is used for voting members being regular attendance and regular givers, that regular is awful loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
Could be once a year, right?
Doesn't sound regular to me.
Doesn't sound like it, wow.
But it is a person who well,
I guess that's always bothered me because it's hard to define regular. There's no definition of regular.
we did, a synod I recall tried to change the number of clauses in the definition, and it was rejected. There was an or was proposed, and we ended up with an and instead of an or. That I won't say anything more.
Thank you.
I was going to say, yes, we have a very open membership, I guess, which is maybe a good thing. I know my mom went from the Anglican Church back to the United Church, and she had to show proof of membership at the Anglican, that she had been a member of this Anglican Church for 50 years. And of course, there's no such form.
One thing to note, if I don't know if you go between 2 different parishes, you can only vote in one parish.
That is true. One of the questions raises that, in effect. Some people attend one parish in the summer and another parish in the winter. And I suppose they just choose which parish they are a member of at annual meeting time.
Yeah,
Are there policies for AGMs and in virtual spaces? I'm not sure we have a policy, but it's certainly possible. You can have an annual meeting by Zoom, as long as you gave people notice. You would have to take into account the fact that not all parishioners will have access to Zoom, but there might be a way to respond to that by having some parishioners go to the house of other parishioners. I can't remember what happened during COVID. Did we have annual meetings by Zoom?
We did one. Yeah. It's a little bit cumbersome to have a congregation involved and have it on Zoom at the same time, because the people that are connected remotely have to have input. So it slows down voting considerably, because by the time you get it counted and then relayed back to the in-person group, it's a bit cumbersome, but
did we have one just on Zoom one year?
that would be better. But
Yeah,
we didn't do that.
We did. We had. Okay. Don't know.
That
what
would be
happened.
much
I
easier.
guess because most annual meetings took place in the beginning of that year after the pandemic started, and we probably had the opportunity to meet partially.
Yeah.
So yeah, all on Zoom is probably easier than a hybrid.
Yeah.
But in any case, elections are a little more complicated because you need to check who's voting, that sort of thing. So that becomes and there is tech for that, yes. But you're still not necessarily sure who's at the other end of the mouse. I guess. Yeah. Oops. Any other questions? Realize for the recording we should have repeated all the questions, but hopefully they show up in in the recordings.
Yeah, I wonder if they do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they do.
Yeah. We didn't miss any, no.
Can I just make one point just with wardens? It looks like it says no warden may serve more than 5 consecutive years. But if both wardens are caught by the same term limit, then one of them may serve a 6th year. So that's the only time when a warden can serve more than 5. If they're both elected for 5 years at the same time, one can serve a 6th only.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We've staggered them. It's
Yep, which
St.
is
Paul's
a
and
good
Rosse,
way.
but we have somebody that's hitting 3 years, and he seems to think that he's out. And we're having a bit of a challenge finding the next great warden. So
Yeah.
You can't actually force people, I guess.
well, we can try.
You could try.
Yeah.
Sorry for using chat. No, it's fine to use chat. Thanks. I need to be cognizant that we should repeat the questions in the chat, but I think the answers made the in those cases made the topic obvious.
Well, thank you all for attending. I will end as I began with a reference to Basil Buckland's memoir. If you get a chance to find it in a used bookstore, and there are a fair number of copies because it was reprinted at least once, it's a charming, charming book, and you'll enjoy it.
Just put that in the chat, actually. Not if anyone missed it at the beginning.
Thank you for doing this, David.
So my thanks as well, David.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Because there are normally questions, and I also appreciate that David does every year. Well, he did it a number of years ago, and he updates it every year. A 2-pager on running the corporation annual meeting, and also a slightly longer on running the a vestry or a meeting of a regular meeting of the corporation. And those are on our website on the page for the annual meeting page or the parish officers selection of pages. And I will put links with the YouTube video to that just in case anyone's not aware. So thank you all for attending, and this is, where are we, third in near the end of the month. We've moved from the 3rd Tuesday to the 4th Tuesday. We'll have Philip, our treasurer, will speak on the grant process. So the next grant deadline will be very shortly after said talk, but
We've delayed a little bit.
yeah, but we'll
so give you time if you have a grant, put it in.
But yeah, well, people come with questions for that, and we have money to give away, so we'd like to see parishes applying for it. So very good. So take care, everyone, and have a good week. Have a good beginning of Lent.
Thank you so
we meet
much.
again.
Appreciated having this. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
No.